welcome to another episode of Supercharge Your Soul podcast. I am your host, Dimple Bindra, and today we have Ebrima Abrahams Cisse. Ebrima, who's also known as Abraham Cisse, is the founder and chief empathy officer at Freedom Project, a multicultural impact creative agency with the goal to make positive change by guiding a billion people to mental health breakthroughs, all with a unique twist. Previously, Abraham worked as a fractional marketing and distribution executive for tech software companies such as UB, Marvel Studios, Humana, University of Kansas Health System, Shake Shack, and Abraham loves to write about mental health breakthroughs, making content experiences, engagement campaigns, and storytelling. So,
Okay.
Ebrima, thank you so much for being here today. And it's
hmm
such a pleasure. I have seen your video, your trailers.
hmm
I would love to know, could you share a little bit with our audience a bit about yourself and the journey that has brought you to where you are now?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I know we met on LinkedIn. I send you a message because I'm like, okay, cool. This person looks cool. It looks like the work that they're doing. I see a lot of synergy. So here we are today on your podcast. So thanks for having me. But yeah. Well, my name is Ebrima Abraham Cisse, and I'm the founder of the Freedom Project. And I originally came from Gambia. It's a very, very small island in West Africa. And it's actually inside another country called Senegal. So a lot of people don't know Gambia. They're like, "What's Gambia?" I was like, "It's on the west coast of Africa, and
Mhm.
it's actually a small island that goes inside Senegal, but it's surrounded by Senegal on three sides. Beautiful island. I think at this point they have a million, people as far as population. So yeah, I came from that island. And I moved to the US about 10 years ago, actually 11 years ago now. But I've had the opportunity to travel to England. I've played soccer and I've been to Norway for a little bit. So I've just kind of traveled around. But US is the one place that I've just decided, all right, this is home. And yeah, so it's been almost 11 years now, but I came here very traumatized. And then
Mm.
the whole US just it made my trauma even more like obvious than I had even known back then. So yeah, now I talk about mental health because I had an opportunity to see a therapist about 8 years ago and learn about my mental health. But yeah, so that's my quick background.
Thank you for sharing it because I'm sure our
Mhm.
listeners are very keen on what really happened and why is United States, why is it bringing out the trauma within you? So I
Mhm.
am going to definitely ask you about if you can share and if you're comfortable sharing about your
Mhm.
story of trauma after witnessing your friend drowning. And
Mhm.
I understand that you have had a profound experience that
Mhm.
deeply affected you. So can you take us back to the moment you witnessed your friend drowning? And
Right.
how that incident has impacted your life and perspective.
Yeah. I played soccer, like I mentioned, and I had a group of friends. Even if you look at if you Google my name and you see the pictures of me and a bunch of four different guys, we would hang out all the time, and we all played soccer together, and we were very competitive. I they all knew that I was the best among all of them, but still, it was healthy just to just have that constant competition, like a rivalry. But that was one of my friends who actually drowned, and we all ended up seeing that. But I was a lot more close to him because we played the same position, so we had that intense, rivalry already. So
Mhm.
after he drowned, or me seeing that experience of him drowning did something to me mentally. And back then, I remember my uncle, because back in Gambia, we were told not to go to the beach. It was a place where, because most of us don't know how to swim, so we're not allowed to go there. However, as a team, after every game, we would just go there anyway. And unfortunately, my friend got drowned. And I remember my uncle came to the beach while it was happening, and then he beat me from the beach all the way to the house, because that was his way of, you could have drowned. Why would you put yourself in this situation? And that's the environment that I grew up in. Like, everyone had the green card to beat you
Oh.
in Gambia, West Africa. But yeah, it was coming from a place of love, which is weird to say now, especially going through healing and learning about myself, past traumas. But that's their way of showing that they love someone, like by beating the crap out of you. Yeah. So the experience of him drowning was not the greatest thing ever because I got to see that, and me getting beat up by my uncle, I felt like it was my fault that it happened. And I remember we had to go apologize to his mom because our parents told us to go apologize. And me as a little kid, like, why am I didn't put him in I didn't push him. But then, everyone just made it seem like it was our fault. I remember going to his mom and he's screaming at us, crying. And us as little kids, we didn't know how to, respond to that. And me now going back home, we had all these rules, like you can never go to the beach, you can never do this, no more soccer. Like it was so intense. So to me, automatically I felt like it was my fault. um I started actually developing some symptoms of trauma. Back then obviously I didn't know that this was trauma, down to me having a stutter. Like I had this crazy stutter out of nowhere from the manifestation of all the trauma. So the stutter itself was a manifestation of all the trauma that I went through as a kid. So yeah, so that's that was the experience of me growing up and witnessing something very traumatic. But at the same time, there were other things happening to me. Like our coach was molesting pretty much half of the kids on the team, and this is something that I was also tackling at the same time, not really knowing who to talk to about it. So I didn't even come out with that story until like 4 years ago when I posted it on Facebook and YouTube. And I had a
Mhm.
bunch of teammates like literally calling me saying, yo, this was happening to you too. It's like, what do you mean you two? Like, so he was doing this to all of us. Like, why didn't anyone talk about it? So yeah, so the whole experience of Gambia was not the greatest, honestly, because it was just filled with experiences that I would not wishing anyone to like go through. But at the same time, I did experience a lot of great things, which were the friendships that I got to develop playing soccer. That's why I'm living in the US, because my friends moved to North Carolina, and I'm just like, I'm going to the US too, and then I ended up here. So, but yeah.
Wow, I
Mhm,
am so sorry for what you went through as a child and you witnessing your own friend's death to,
mhm,
getting beat up by the uncle and then from there being molested by the coach and something you had told me on the first day that we spoke, and I would love you to share this with us on this podcast,
mhm,
is your relationship with your ex, you know,
mm,
and
right.
and I know that relationships, especially like the relationship with your friend or your uncle,
Mhm,
or let's say the coach and your ex,
mhm,
relationships can often teach us the most unexpected lessons, right?
right.
And
Mhm,
could you share some of your hard lessons that you have learned from your past relationship and
of
how
course.
those experiences have shaped you as the person today?
No, yeah. This is something that I even advocate for now after knowing myself and going to therapy, learning about my own triggers, the way that I behave around other people, and the little cues that I'm not even aware of, which my ex-girlfriend was very, very good at pointing out, which was things that I didn't even realize were there. But just to give you a backstory, I grew up in a space where I've never been told I love you. I've never dated anyone until when I came to the US. Obviously I had a lot of crushes back in high school, but I wasn't confident. I had a stutter. Like, who do you go talk to? Like the wall?
Hey,
uh,
me too. I
right,
started growing up as a kid, so I know
right.
exactly how you feel.
I know.
And being hated by my relatives because they couldn't talk to me on the phone when they
I
called
know.
me.
It's like
So,
all I had so much thought in my head. I'll say a whole sentence, complete sentence in my head. And the moment I'm in front of someone, I'm like, and nothing doesn't come out. I'm like struggling to speak. So this was me, this nerdy kid with all these, like insecurities. So out of nowhere, I met a girl that says she loves me. And I was like, what the heck do you mean she loves you? Like, what do you want? And then back then I didn't really understand when someone loves you what that actually meant. And but for me, the fact that it happened to me for the first time, I just felt like, she's mine, she loves me, of course. So which means because back then I didn't even know that I love her, but the fact that she said she loved me, and she was someone that was very well known in college, and I was like, cool, I have the coolest girl. But now she's mine. And then little by little, and this is something that I wasn't aware of at all. But back then, when we were dating, I noticed that I was shrinking her world. I started, I was getting insecure by the men that were around her. These are friends from my childhood. I was like, no, I feel uncomfortable. I don't like how you touch that guy's shoulder. I don't like how he looks at you. Like all these things that I didn't even realize I was insecure about. And I started, just getting angry about everything that was happening in her life. That was a good thing. But back then I was so insecure and so blinded that I could not see that. All I saw was how she was making me feel insecure, and I was blaming her for that. And luckily for me, she was very, very she's just a strong woman, just all around. She literally sat me down and said, "Hey, if you don't get your shit together, I am leaving." And then I remember back then I was like, well, if the one person that says she loves me is gonna leave, maybe I am the problem. Let me go seek help. So that was my initial attempt to see a therapist, and I was able to like see a therapist, which took me forever to find one that actually works for me. Schedule, it was so confusing. And mind you, I was in a very rough space, like, hey, my girl is going to leave me, I need to talk to someone. And I remember talking to the first therapist that actually worked almost 6 months into trying to find a therapist, because I had the reason why I needed a therapist, because I wanted to save this relationship, this person that I felt like was mine. So I went to therapist with all the wrong reasons. So I was trying to learn ways to be a good boyfriend to her, and ways that I wouldn't complain when she has other men around her. But into the therapist session, I remember my therapist would always tell me, okay, let's go back to your childhood. Tell me your childhood. I was like, yo, like, no, I don't give a crap about my childhood. Can you tell me tips and tricks on how to get this girl back? Like,
You're a typical guy, a typical guy.
Literally, I was just in
Yeah.
therapy, just yelling at her.
You're like,
But
screw the childhood. What are you talking about? I
is
just
that
want
what
to
you're
get
talking about?
my
I'm
girl.
fine. I have a great job. I'm a software guy. I make money. I played soccer, all these other things. But then I was like, I like remember at some point that she brought up a behavior that I had, which was I always get triggered whenever I don't get attention to my childhood, because I guess I have told her a story of my childhood which she remembered, like initially or during the onboarding process, and she brought that back, and she's like, you see this behavior right here, this is coming from a place of your childhood. And then I remember it made so much sense in my head, and I was like, yeah, I remember the memory. Whoa, like, where is this coming from? And then I remember calling my mom and saying, hey, did this happen to me when I was a kid? Did my friend die when I was a kid? Like memories that were so prevalent in my life somehow just were in my subconscious, which blew my mind. I was like, whoa, like I imagine what else is in my subconscious that I'm not aware of. And that was my motivation to keep seeking therapy. And I remember back then, I would always go to therapy. Like I was spending so much money on therapy because I'm like, this is amazing. I get to have someone listen to me, give me attention. It was crazy. And then, but then little by little, I remember my therapist like reminding me that, I've noticed that you haven't talked about your ex this for the past 3 weeks. And I'm like, oh, yes, I haven't even talked about her. Let me check whether she's okay. And then, after that like reminder, and I remember telling myself, do I love this person because I actually love her? Or is it because I love the idea of being with her? Because she makes me feel all these emotions that I've never experienced before. Now I feel like she's mine. And then somewhere along the line, I realized, wow, like I'm sure this is how a lot of domestic violence situations start, from the guy dealing with all these traumas and then putting in a, being in a situation where they're very insecure about their whole like new environment that they're being introduced to. So instead of just being open to it, they are constantly closing themselves off from that new experience. And then the moment they feel triggered, they feel attacked, either their ego, emotionally, and they just lash back, which, as we all know, domestic violence situations are very prevalent, especially during COVID. And I made the decision that, okay, I'm going to create something, either that's a video series just to address mental health so that people can see other people telling their stories in order to talk about, like mental health. And hoping that, just for example, me and you talking, someone watching this online realizing, oh, what he's saying is what I'm going through right now. Maybe I also probably have some issues. Maybe I should go address this before my relationship goes south, or all these other things. So that was my initial intention with the Freedom Project. I named it Freedom Project because I was interviewing someone, and he was like, "Oh, like freedom in America is a toxic version of what freedom really is." And I'm like, "Oh, that's a cool name. Let me call this Freedom Project." And I started calling it Freedom Project, and it was supposed to be one documentary addressing, just like issues around society and how we are all even though we're all separated, but pain is one thing that always is like bringing us together. And when we fight it is when we create more silos between communities, and there's more pain between those silos, and we're not helping each other. And then like social isolation, as we see today, is one of the biggest problem, to the point the US Surgeon General is like addressing it all over the US, because we're so isolated, but then we're so connected at the same time online. But it's because we're missing that human touch and the human connection and the genuine, human to human experience. We're currently like missing that. So I decided to create a documentary to go into the streets and talk to people, and to document the whole thing and publish it. And
Nice.
I remember doing one video, and it kind of went viral on LinkedIn, and people started do more, and I was like, oh, okay, who's gonna pay for this? But I'll keep doing this. So I kept doing videos. From those street videos turned into a documentary, to films, to TV show, to now the Freedom Project became a whole company, which is designed to constantly keep talking about mental health, like talking about legislation. So we have two bills right now in the state of Missouri and Kansas. And so we're also working on conferences and a bunch of other things which we can get into here. But yeah, that's the story of what I learned from my ex, and how her pushing me to go see a therapist led to me building a whole company. Like the power,
Wow.
like Women Whole is just in like, it's I can't even quantify it. So, but yes.
That is awesome. So your mental health breakthrough of finding yourself, actually, you started putting it out in the external world as building your own company. So this
Right.
happened with the woman that you had a crush on or you were in a relationship with. But what I'm curious about, the next question, and I may just dissect just a little bit, is you pinpointed the fact that you were insecure, and what you're dealing with, so many men deal with it on daily basis, and they don't understand
Indeed.
why they're doing what they're doing. What advice would you give to all those men who are in a relationship today, but even the thought of their wife or girlfriend talking to somebody, or the thought of their wife maybe talking to their men clients, like what advice do you have for them just based on what you have went through?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I always talk to friends about is like, before you go into relationships or date anything or anybody, even if you date a chair, make sure you are in checked emotionally. Make sure you go see a therapist. Make sure you talk to a coach or whatever is in your life that can give you value as far as like emotions go. Talk to that individual and try to understand what's important to you. What is it that you are wanting to accomplish? Does this person align with that? And when I say accomplish, I'm not talking about the business, because that's what everyone talks about in America. I want to find a business relationship that can support me. I'm talking about on an healthy emotional well-being aspect. Just putting yourself in a position to actually win when it comes to being with someone. And if you're already in a relationship feeling all of these things, just speak up, because chances are your partner, whoever they may be, they love you to an extent that they don't even see anybody else. So if you're sitting there all insecure, just know that you are missing the chance of having a dialogue with this individual that is just waiting for you to speak up. Because most men, they don't talk about how they feel. They'll see something and keep it, and just keep piling on top of it, instead of just saying, hey, can we talk about this? And most of the time, if you talk to a woman, they'll most likely like call you BS, which is something that I remember back then. I would mention something about her, a friend that kind of like hugged her weird, and then she was like, really, is it
Exactly.
really about that? Is this something happened that you want to talk about? I was like, no, it's about that. But I knew in my head that something else is going on. So yeah, like, just be able to check yourself emotionally and make sure that you're emotionally ready to take on someone else, or be taken by anyone else. just be emotionally healthy. That's my thesis for this whole freedom project, is people to be aware of their own triggers, of their own insecurities, so that they can better keep themselves like accountable when they're dealing with other people. Because this goes all the way to leadership. Like it's wide how the lack of like emotional like maturity that people lack when it comes to dating other people. It's crazy. Like I see all I have an email where people put out stories, and I just started recommending this book back there. It's called The Power of Empathy. I have to show you. Give me 1 minute.
Sure. So The Power of Empathy.
Yeah, it's a great book that I started reading, and it's something that I recommend to pretty much all whenever I have people on the Freedom Project that I talk to, or like people that are going through like relationship issues, because at the end of the day, they're lacking empathy for each other, and they're just lashing out at each other, trying to be right. I'm right. I'm right. When it should be a safe space where you both, and when I say you both, I'm talking about in a couple sense, like,
yeah,
just have an agreement. If we're going through something where we find ourselves yelling at each other, let's just calm down. Let's go sit in the living room or on the bed and just have a conversation. Like, why are you angry? Like, let's get to the root of the problem. And this is for people that are already married, that are probably dealing with some like emotions of like insecurity, and they don't really know how to talk about it because they're ashamed. Because shame also can be a very big problem in like relationships. Because most people want to be like, yeah, I'm the secure guy. I'm so secure that I don't even see the guys. That's not true. But just having the dialogue and conversation, can take the relationship in a whole different trajectory. So this book, I'd highly recommend people to read it. It's a great book.
Tell us about the
Yes.
author. What's the name of the author?
Yeah, so the author's name is Michael. Yeah, his name is Michael Tennant, Tennant, Michael.
Got it.
He's like an African American writer, artist, amazing guy all around. But his take on empathy is I feel like it fits with the current world that we live in. But yeah,
I'll definitely read it.
Summary, but I know we're in a podcast, so we'll save that for another day.
That's perfect. That's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to know. So, and especially when you said that men need to actually have a conversation, to that I would add that men need to drop the idea that nothing happened in their childhood that's causing them to be insecure. So I need, this is great because you're already saying that I whenever I'm coaching, I'm always telling my clients that if something is making you insecure, it's not that person or that situation. It's actually deep down, you have been already insecure in the past because of something else, which is a good way to reflect on your past. So my last question to you is, what's going on for you right now? What are you working on? And please tell us about the conference which you're having in 2024.
Yeah. So over the past 5 months, I actually took a step away from Freedom Project because, with anything in life, the moment you build something, you introduce more people. And if you don't have a strong boundary, which something that I learned through managing almost 60 plus people on my team, multiple teams, I find myself in situations where I was saying yes to everything, which almost took the company in a whole different, space that I wasn't planning, and almost shattered everything. Because I also learned through therapy that I remember I'll go to my therapist and complain. So therapy is a great resource. That's all I'm saying. You can complain to them and they listen. Like it's a great deal. But I remember back then, this was like 6 months ago. I would go to therapy and complain that no one is listening. I want them to stick on this vision, and then my therapist was like, "Are you talking to them?" And I was like, "Well, I don't want them to hate me. Like, so I feel like everyone's voice mattered. So I don't want to just deem their ideas." She's like, "Well, simply because everyone's voices matter doesn't mean everyone's idea deserves to be on the table." I was like, "Oh, that's because some of the ideas were ridiculous," but then I was too afraid to talk about it. So what, and the reason why I'm sharing your story is goes back to the idea of going back to your childhood and understanding your triggers. Because mine was, my dad will always tell me not to talk back. and which actually was the idea about around me having a stutter, was the fact that I wasn't allowed to speak up, and me having this massive team with no preparation, with no check on a personal level whether I'm mentally ready for that. As someone in a leader within the space, I took on this big team and I didn't know how to communicate with them. And I was always getting triggered because the idea, some of them I didn't agree with them at all, but I was afraid to speak up. And it turned out to me firing people the wrong way and ghosting my team. I was just all around bad leader. So the past 5 months, I actually stepped away from everything. I went back into the drawing board. I actually rebranded the whole Freedom Project, and instead of it being a side documentary that just has a bunch of 1099, I decided to turn it into a whole company now, so that we can have structures in place. So the rebranding, like results to the media network that that it has become, because we have almost 14 different projects that are all happening on the side project, which just shouldn't be considered a side project. So now what we have going on is that our goal is to do a national conference around mental health in Kansas City, because Kansas City was named as the dead last when it comes to taking care of mental health issues. Kansas City was 50 of all 50 states. So I just dropped up an initiative with the city and told them that my goal is to make Kansas and Missouri, because Kansas and Missouri both share one city, which is Kansas City. So I want to make Kansas City top 5 in 5 years. So 5 for 5, that's the initiative that I'm running. And so with this initiative, one of the goals is to do the 5-day convention. It was supposed to be 3 days, but I'm extending it to 5.
Oh, nice.
At the convention center. So I'm having a partnership with the city, and the goal is to bring all these national companies in Kansas City, and we're doing a whole Oscar step event, but for mental health. And the goal for me and the company is to bring in all of these mental health advocates all over the U.S., eventually the world, but this is year 2, and then actually give them awards. We have 11 categories, and I'm going all out. We're spending so much money into this; it's ridiculous. Because I want to have as much attention on this event as possible. Because I believe, we're always talking about awareness, but when it comes to awareness, we're always saying it is okay to say no. It is okay. It's like, come on, everyone is saying that. Okay, can we talk about actual suicide that's happening every day in the U.S.? 130 suicides a day. That's insane. That it's happening every day. Like, how can we address that in a way that it can actually be more like engaging, more like relatable? So I'm like tapping into my background as a media like distributor, as a marketer, and someone who worked in software to address mental health now. So this conference, in day 1, we're doing a whole Oscars event. We're gonna block the whole downtown, red carpet, everything, awards given to 11 different categories. And then the rest will be a convention with like artists performing every day, just to get people coming in. And our goal is to have at least 20,000 people show up for that event. So every guest will have a mental health starter kit, which is a black box. Is created to be a way to just introduce people to mental health therapy, all these sort of things. And I actually just got a wristband came in that we're using for people to wear. Because another thing that I realized when it comes to healthcare, there's so many silos in healthcare, and the patient has no control. So those wristbands are like, designed to be a like a subconscious training for all these industries. Imagine if you're an individual who walks into an event space, a convention, and you have your bracelet with your entire information, which is HIPAA compliant, and you get to choose which healthcare person to work with, which mental health person to work with, and all of them are going to have a kiosk, and you get to share information by just tapping on that kiosk, and you just safely transfer your information without violating any, because one thing I hate about events is like they have all those white papers. Tell me your name. Like, where does that end?
Exactly. Oh,
so
this
it's a
is
big event.
awesome.
It's major. It's major. So.
Am I invited?
Oh, of course. Yes. Of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. So when is the event?
So it's from May 3rd to May 7th.
Great. And how can people register or look it up? Where should they go? What website?
Yeah, so right now, in order to learn anything, it would best to go to Freedom Project Media Network, so fpmedianetworks.com with an S. And but the event itself, the website is it's going to be forumawards.com. So we're currently doing the transfer of all the content from the events.freedomprojectkc.com, super long. But for now, if, in the coming year, which is in 2 days, it will be forumawards.com. Simple.
Can you spell that for us?
Yeah, it's forum as in FOORUM awards, AWARDS.com.
All right.
And a lot of people ask, why do you have two O's? I was like, why not?
Why
It's
not?
fun. It's Googleable. Is that a word? Googleable. Yes.
Googleable. That's so
Yes.
cool.
It's
Thank
Googleable.
you.
So,
We
mhm.
loved having you on our show. This is great. And you have been one of the, I would say, the best inspiration that I actually got from, which means that a lot of men, when they listen to
Mhm.
you, I'm sure that they will know that, hey, you know what? There is this guy
Mhm.
out there in Kansas trying to like change the world, change the mental health story. And we better listen to him that we need to go reflect back on our childhood stories to get rid of our
Mhm.
insecurities, our jealousies, or any other
Mhm.
crazy behavior. So
Right.
thank you, Ebrima. I loved having you on our show. And
Absolutely.
for all of our listeners, I just want to say that remember, metamorphosis, not medication. Namaste.